The Gemara Masechet Pesachim taught, Kol ha-mitzvot mevarek alehen ober l'asiyatan. The blessing recited when performing all of the mitzvot is recited immediately prior to performing the mitzvah. Based on that principle, Harambam wrote regarding lighting candles for Shabbat, V'hayav lebarech kodem hadlaka, and one is obligated to recite the blessing before lighting. Just to clarify, when I say candles, I'm not referring specifically to wax candles, as traditionally we lit cups of oil in honor of Shabbat and holidays. Now, Rabbi Moshe Israelish, a Halachic authority from Poland in the 16th century, who we commonly refer to as Muram, wrote in a note appended to Shulchan Aruch that some recite the blessing on Shabbat candles before lighting, and there is one who says to recite the blessing after lighting, and they do not enjoy the light until after reciting the blessing, and therefore they place a hand in front of the candles after lighting, and then recite the blessing, and then move their hand away so the blessing is recited before enjoying the light, and that's the custom. This custom of reciting the blessing after lighting is based on a concern that perhaps the law is in accordance with the opinion of the Baal Halachot Gedolot, a Babylonian Halachic authority from the 8th century, who ruled that one automatically accepts Shabbat when lighting the Shabbat candles. And there are some who explain that the acceptance takes effect when the blessing is recited. Therefore, they light the candles before reciting the blessing. However, according to Maran, one is only obligated to accept Shabbat when lighting Shabbat candles if they're lighting the Shabbat candles more than 30 minutes before sunset. Furthermore, according to Maran, one only accepts Shabbat when lighting Shabbat candles after they completed lighting, not after reciting the blessing. Still in all, the custom of lighting Shabbat candles before reciting the blessing spread to many Middle Eastern communities. Lighting before reciting the blessing was supported by the Haidam in his book Mahzik Berakah, and by the Bihain Palachi in his book Hayim Lirosh. Furthermore, according to the Ben Ish Hai, the woman recites the blessing with her hand over her closed eyes after lighting the candles. And reciting the blessing after lighting was also practiced in Morocco and Jerba. What was the custom in Halab? In the book Shulchan HaMelech, which was written in Halab in the year 1804 by Rabbi Shemuel Anyado, it says that there is a difference of opinion about reciting the blessing before or after lighting. And the Haidam agreed to recite the blessing after lighting in his book Mahzik Berakah. So while Rabbi Lanyado doesn't record what the prevalent custom of Halab was in his time, he did lend support to lighting before reciting the blessing. And in the book Ala Ezra, which records the writings of Hakam Ezra Atiyah and his students, it says the custom of the Sephardim in most places is to light before reciting the blessing. There's also a story that is recorded in the book Avir HaRo'im, which is a biography of Hakam Yosef that was written by his grandson, Yaakov Sasson. Hakam Ovadia was visiting Hakam Ezra Atiyah in his home and persuading him that lighting before reciting the blessing was incorrect. When Hakam Ezra Atiyah agreed with Hakam Ovadia, Hakam Ovadia Yosef suggested that Hakam Ezra Atiyah tell his wife to change her custom and start reciting the blessing before lighting from now on. Hakam Ezra called his wife over and told her that Hakam Ovadia said that she should start reciting the blessing before lighting the Shabbat candles, but she politely declined to change what she was already accustomed to doing. So there definitely were Halabi families that practiced the custom of lighting before reciting the blessing for Shabbat candles. However, the book Derech Eretz quoted Hakam Yishak Safrani, who said that the custom of Halab was to recite the blessing before lighting. And Hakam Yishak Shehebar also wrote in his book Yishak Yiranin that the custom of Halab was to recite the blessing before lighting the Shabbat candles. Rabbi Shlomo Saka Antebi quoted both those who lit before reciting the blessing, like Hakam Yaakov Atiyah, and Hakam Ovadia Hadaya, and Hakam Abraham Harari Raful. And he also quoted the custom of those that recited the blessing first, including Hakam Yishak Shehebar and other knowledgeable members of the Halabi community in Argentina. Lastly, he quoted Rabbi Haim HaKohen from Aram Sobah, who was a student of Rabbi Haim Vital, who started the blessing before lighting, and then lit while reciting the last 3 words of the blessing. So from here we see that in Halab, some families lit before reciting the blessing, while others lit after reciting the blessing. From a halachic standpoint, Sephardim are not obligated to accept Shabbat when lighting Shabbat candles unless we are lighting more than 30 minutes before sunset, And even then, we don't accept Shabbat until we are finished lighting. And reciting the blessing after lighting is problematic because we can only recite a blessing after performing a mitzvah if we are still performing the mitzvah when we recite the blessing. Like, if we are still wearing a talit, we could still recite the blessing. Or if we're still wearing our tefillin, we could still recite the blessing. Or if we are still sitting in the sukkah, we could still recite the blessing. But with regards to lighting the candles, after the act of lighting, you are not still performing the mitzvah. So reciting the blessing afterwards would be considered a blessing said in vain. So if one does not have a clear family custom to light first, the blessing should be recited before lighting the Shabbat candles.